Ladies and gentlemen, our referee has called a stop to this contest, declaring the winner by knockout and new MMA show! Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting round of and new MMA show. I'm your host, Michael Hansen. I do all kinds of mystifying things with microphones. Chief among them, I am a professional ring announcer and MMA cage announcer, and I am joined, as I always am, by my two friends who bring MMA punditry to new heights. First up, joining us from New York, Mark Priaulx. Mark, what's going on, babe?
Not much, boys. I don't have much to report this week. It has been a busy-ass week in only 2 days, but ready to disconnect for a little bit and talk some MMA.
I see you're going classic tonight with the New York Yankees hat representing.
Gotta rep it. We've won 1 million games in a row, so it's the hat's got to show up on the podcast at some point.
Awesome. And on the right side of your screen, joining us from Florida, Omar Artola. Omar, what's up, bud?
Trying to figure out this finger situation. It might be broken.
Oh, what happened?
It's the same finger I was having issues with. So I got it to move most of it, but it just, you can see how it doesn't do the same thing.
Yeah.
Did you do that from hitting your heavy bag?
No. This was somebody punched me in my finger. Long story.
Okay.
There's no way I can properly describe how stupid this was, but I got punched directly in the finger. My finger went completely back, came back, and it was the next day it was the color of a bunch of rainbows, and it's mostly healed. Like I said, I couldn't move it at all before, but it was mostly healed.
Okay.
But this part here looks like it's not bending right, and I think it might be broken. I don't know what I was supposed to do.
Oh, sorry to hear that, buddy.
Yeah.
No bueno.
Yeah.
I hope you can get through the podcast. I did it with a cough a couple weeks ago, so you can do it with the finger, I think.
It's been like this for like a month now, or like 3 weeks. So,
well, guys,
I'm still training with it, so it is what it is.
So we have a lot to discuss on this episode. As you guys know, there's a lot of fights going on right now in the MMA world between the UFC, Bellator, PFL, Ryzen, ONE FC. There are a lot of fights going on in the professional space. So on today's episode, we're going to start off, as we always do, with On the Marquee. Then we're going to discuss other big fights and noteworthy results from the last weekend's cards. Then we're going to hop into our Priaulx rankings. Then we're going to look to the future for next weekend's UFC and PFL cards. And then we're going to dive deep into the MMA sphere with Omar Artola. But first, if you are watching this video, please like and subscribe. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, go ahead and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. It really helps us out. So boys, let's start off with our first segment. This is On the Marquee. This week on the Marquee, the name has got to be Alexandre the Cannibal Pantoja. This past Saturday night at UFC Fight Night, Cannonier versus Gastelum at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. An exciting and consequential fight went down in the men's flyweight division. No, it was not the main event, if you haven't guessed that already. Alexandre Pantoja defeated Brandon Royval via submission by rear naked choke at 1 minute and 46 seconds of round number 2 in what was a very exciting fight, as the lighter weight classes always are. Mark, let me start with you. What did you make of Pantoja's second round submission victory against the always exciting and dangerous Brandon Royval?
Yeah, I mean, what an exciting fight. That fight was everything that we were hoping it would be and more. I mean, the pace was through the roof, which was actually concerning me, considering that we picked Pantoja, or not some of us did, but Royval, it was setting such a crazy pace that I was like, my God, like Pantoja looks great, but I don't know if he's gonna be able to keep this up. But thankfully he did. I said last week that someone who scrambles as crazy as Royval does, as good as he is, when you scramble that crazy and you are up against a true BJJ practitioner who is calm and methodical, that you risk leaving yourself open and getting caught. And it's exactly what happened. It was just one scramble too many. Pantoja was always a step ahead, was always calm, even when he was in a little bit of quote unquote trouble. He was really fine the whole time, but he stayed so calm, got himself out of it.
Yeah.
He was just better. It was kind of what what we had mentioned in the breakdown. He was better everywhere the fight took place. I thought the pace was certainly a weapon that Royval had and was trying to exploit. But Pantoja was the better fighter, the more skilled fighter. He looked crisp on the feet. He looked good everywhere like he always does, and absolutely great. Enormous win.
Omar, in the post-fight Octagon interview, Pantoja called out the newly crowned men's flyweight champion, Brandon the Assassin Baby Moreno, who Pantoja actually has not one but 2 victories over Moreno, a 2016 submission win on the Ultimate Fighter, and then in a rematch in 2018, he got a unanimous decision victory over Moreno. But now Pantoja, the number 3 ranked flyweight right now, seems to be right there knocking on the door of his very own UFC title shot. And who should be answering that door but Brandon Moreno? So do you think that we should be getting Moreno Pantoja 3 next?
100%. 100%. I was actually, as much as I like Brandon Royval, I was actually hoping that Pantoja would win because I'm a huge Moreno fan and I really want him to be able to get that win back, especially now that he's got gold. And I think that fight makes more sense because although Pantoja has 2 wins over Moreno, Moreno has now been able to overstep him in the rankings, right? If you look at how that's not MMA math, right? That shouldn't really work out. But here Moreno is at the top with the gold, with the strap that Pantoja's wanted since day one. That Pantoja has frankly been right there the whole time, but somehow Moreno got over one on him. So definitely one he needs to get back and really prove that that he is the champ, right? But this guy, the guy that you beat twice, not the same guy. I'm a different Brandon Moreno. So I'm excited, definitely excited for that fight.
Well, Mark, with this really impressive win that Pantoja has over Royval, Pantoja now improves his professional record to 24-5. Wow. That's quite the record. So what do we think about the potential third fight between Moreno and Pantoja?
I mean, as Omar said, how often do you see a champ who is 0-2 against someone in his own division? It's definitely a unique circumstance where we could be stepping into a trilogy fight where someone's 0-2 in the first 2, but there's still a reason for the trilogy, and B, the person who's 0-2 is the champ. I'm not sure if we've ever seen that before. And
one time,
who was it?
The only time I can think of that we could say was Anthony Pettis and Ben Henderson.
What, a third time?
Well, because remember they fought the first time for WEC.
Yeah,
that was the major fight, and so I guess the whole controversy was that he was supposed to fight him in the UFC. That Anthony Pettis was supposed to get a title fight first, didn't get the title fight because of the Frankie Edgar-Gray Maynard situation.
Right.
Got screwed on it, lost the fight to Clay Guida by getting Russell humped. Then Ben Henderson jumped him in line to get the title fight.
But it was
that was kind of
my
math.
Similar vibes. I see what you mean, though.
Yes.
But yeah, and not only is he 0-2 against Pantoja, but Pantoja literally has his number. He subbed him and he beat him 30-26, which is no close fight.
Yeah.
So it's pretty unique to see that. I love it, and I agree it should be what's next, simply because I feel like flyweight is kind of screaming out for like a story. We just had it with Moreno, but now I feel like we've spent weeks, months even here saying like, what do you do with Moreno? Like, should he fight Figueiredo again? But that doesn't feel right. Should he fight Cody Garbrandt? But that doesn't feel right since he hadn't even fought at flyweight yet. And obviously now they've booked him against Kai Kara-France. Should he fight Askar Askarov? Like maybe, but he's not necessarily a name. And now he's hurt anyway. And it's like, boom, here it is. This is it. It's the perfect storyline. You get your champ to legitimize himself, see if he can overcome a guy who's beat him twice, truly stake his claim over the division, and people are going to be interested because of exactly that. It's a trilogy. It brings back the TUF history. They lived in the same house. It's got it all. I think that's a great fight for the flyweight division. I think it helps put eyeballs on it, and that's exactly what you want. I think you asked me how do I see the fight going as well. On that, I don't know. It's so hard to evaluate Moreno because he's one of these guys that we see sometimes in MMA who just all of a sudden makes like a crazy jump, and you're like, holy shit, like why is he so good? When did this happen?
Mhm.
So it's just so hard to tell. Like, yes, Pantoja has absolutely had his number, but Moreno's like a totally different guy now. So it's really hard to tell. I almost want to say, despite the 0-2, I'd be picking Moreno just because he looks that damn good right now, but I'd love to see it.
Omar, let's talk about Brandon Raw Dog Royval. One of the craziest nicknames in MMA.
What a choice, man.
What do you think about Royval going forward? Where does he go from here?
I mean, gotta love Royval though, right? I mean, Royval
Love
didn't
him.
give Pantoja an easy fight by any means, right? So it's I don't really think you send him back that far. I mean, Pantoja was already ahead of him. It's not really like anybody really moved anywhere. We just kind of solidified where Royval was, as far as I'm concerned.
Mhm.
That first round, the pace that he put on, there was no way Pantoja was going to keep that pace for another 2 rounds. It wasn't going to happen. And I think that's why Pantoja at one point stopped moving, frankly, and just kind of waited for his opportunity to take him down and kind of work on the ground, because the shit that was going on standing up was not going to fly. So I think it was one of those moments that we talked about last week where Pantoja had the experience. He's a lot sharper. He knows where he needs to go and he knows how to get there. Royval just keeps flipping the coin and kind of hoping that he'll get the result that he needs. And he's very effective doing that. But, like Mark said, once you start getting to those elite levels, that coin flip doesn't really work all that well. I mean, I don't know what I guess Mark probably knows this off the top of head better than I do. What's Benavidez been doing?
So I thought about that because I saw someone else suggest it, and he does not have a fight book to my knowledge, so that would work. I'm a little concerned just because I feel like whoever loses that fight is like really falling. So like, do you want to risk that either like Benavidez is kind of done, or that Royval has lost 3 in a row and kind of like loses some luster? So like, part of me is like, I'd rather like just take Royval and like give him someone who's like borderline top 10 to like see if he can get a W and end the losing streak. But then the other part of me is like, that's a sick ass fight. So I don't know. I'm good with either way, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really feel bad for Benavidez at this point. Benavidez has had a decent career. I mean, if he really wants to stick around and be ranked, then you're gonna have to fight dudes that are ranked. Like, if you want to have fun fights and do stuff, then that's totally fine too. I don't think he has that many fun fights at flyweight. I mean, who the hell is down there?
Yeah. It's true.
So I mean, he's not gonna have that kind of liberty to do that like you would at some of the other heavier weights. So I'm gonna say he's got to get up off his ass and fight Royval.
Yeah, man, I love Royval. He's one of my favorite fighters right now. He just seems to be, I don't know, a little too wild, a little too reckless in there.
Yeah.
He needs to learn how to win rounds, how to win points in a certain respect. But then again, then he wouldn't be Brandon Royval, would he?
Yeah, I'm always concerned about people trying to change somebody's game, because the reality is that Brandon Royval's gotten to where he's gotten to with the way that he fights. He obviously needs to refine bits of his game, maybe understand certain moments in the fight where he needs to tone it back, as opposed to always having his foot on the gas, always kind of maybe putting in his head position first, always first, especially when he's on the ground. The rolling and stuff like that, those Granby rolls are fine, but if the guy's rolling with you, you're just blowing energy,
right?
Honestly,
he seems like he has it for days, but
but you're not if there's no positive outcome to the action that you're doing, then you're wasting movement. And I think we've all noticed that the guys who have the most success in the UFC have always shown to have the most efficient, movement and the efficient game to outwork these guys. Because at the end of the day, especially when you go in 5 rounds, Royval might have that pace for 3 rounds. We don't know if he has it for 5.
Right.
So he's a fantastic fighter, but there are things in his games that he needs to refine.
maybe we see some small adjustments off a loss, because like the loss prior to this was the Marina one where he got hurt, so it was probably easy for him to say like, oh, I would have had it.
Sure.
Now that he like truly lost, maybe we see him make some changes. So
Yeah. Well, if there's nothing else to say about this fight, let's say props and congrats to Alexandre Pantoja for his week on the marquee. I think this is the first time, guys, that a non-main event is on the marquee, which is extra props to Pantoja and Royval. What a great fight that was. But now let's turn to the three main events from the three different fight cards that were this past weekend, UFC, Bellator, and PFL. But first, let's turn to the main event from last Saturday's UFC Fight Night. A big fight went down in the middleweight division. Jared, the Killer Gorilla, Cannonier defeated Kelvin Gastelum by unanimous decision, earning a 48-47 on all three judges' scorecards. Mark, let me start with you. What did you make of Cannonier's performance getting it done over a tough middleweight in Kelvin Gastelum?
I thought he looked great. It was good to see him back off the injury, moving around well, seeming to look exactly like his old self. So that was good. He certainly won the fight. I scored it 48-47, same as the judges. I think it was pretty clear. What was it? I'm trying to remember now. Gastelum got 2 and 5. Is that right? Yeah. And Cannonier got 1-3-4. Mm-hmm. I don't really know how you could see it any other way than that. But oddly enough, despite scoring it that way, I kind of still came away from the fight feeling like Gastelum was the better fighter.
Really?
Wow. I don't know why. It's something about Cannonier. I don't watch him and think like, man, this guy's ceiling is through the roof, or like, man, this guy can be champ. I don't get it. I never have gotten it from him. And I know I might be in the minority there, but I felt, and obviously Kelvin lost. As I said, I agree that he lost, but as I watched him, I felt like he had the higher ceiling still than Cannonier did. And honestly, I said this to you guys post-fight, I hated that Rafael Cordero, I mean, obviously he's a great coach, but I hated him in the corner telling Kelvin
lying to him
that he was ahead, especially after round 3 when it was clearly 2-1. He had just gotten dropped in round 3. He goes back to the corner and Cordero's like, oh, you won that round. You're ahead. All you have to do is stay behind your jab and you're going to win this. He has to come hard at you now. And Gastelum goes out and absolutely coasts through round 4. And I think the reason we saw Cordero said it again after round 4, but I think the reason we saw Gastelum turn it up in round 5 is because he probably knew, like, I definitely lost round 4. I just did nothing. And obviously he knew he lost the round that he got dropped. So he turns it on in round 5 and he wins it, but it's too late. And I'm sitting here like, man, if he knew he had to push the same pace in round 4, I feel like he could have done it. I feel like it would have been Gastelum 48-47. So I don't know. It's just one of those nights where I'm like, I wish that Cordero didn't say that. I feel like it could have gone differently. I don't know. I don't want to take anything away from Cannonier. Great win. Gastelum is tough as hell, as he proved again. You know, you can't friggin' put the guy down without him popping right back up.
Yeah.
So yeah, great round. I mean, great win for Jared, but it was just an odd one for me. I don't know.
Omar, what were your key takeaways with Cannonier getting the W over Gastelum?
I'll never say Kelvin can't take a punch again. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I don't know what Izzy's hands are made out of though, because I mean, you can see Cannonier touched Gastelum and Gastelum went down, but at no point was he out. Like, he popped right back up. But Izzy put that boy on some mean streets when he hit him. So I'll leave that where that is. But Cannonier looked good. He looked decent. You know, he got the job done. But, you know, I have to kind of agree with Mark in the sense that he doesn't scream like this greatest fighter of all time or this amazing fighter or this guy that can't be beaten or anything like that. Kelvin does seem to present like, or seemingly has more tools, but yeah, it was super frustrating to listen to his whole corner lie for the whole fight. It was a lie. Let's get this straight. It was a lie. They were lying to him for this whole fight about what was going on. And I don't know why. At one point they were like, he's gonna come out desperate. And I was like, who?
Yeah, that was after round 3.
I was like, The guy winning? Like, what do you mean?
Literally just dropped you 2 minutes ago. He's going to come out desperate?
Why is he going to come out desperate?
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't know what they're watching.
I know Cordero knew he was in Gastelum's corner and not Cannonier's corner, right? Because I feel like that's what Cannonier's corner should have been saying to Gastelum or about Gastelum, right? It's like Gastelum's going to come out desperate. You just dropped his ass. Like, he's going to come out trying to finish you.
Yeah.
But
I have to imagine that Cordero, just giving him as much credit as I can as a MMA coach, legendary, that he was just trying to instill confidence in his fighter and not wanting to instill panic in Gastelum.
I don't know though, because if you say he really was aware that they were down 2-1, why would you ever say just stay behind your jab? He has to come to you. And stay behind your jab and you'll win. Like, if you knew he was down 2-1, that's the last thing you want to say.
On top of the fact that you would never let your fighter coast if you really thought he was losing the fight.
Yeah.
Like, if Gastelum had decided to coast for the fourth round, if Cordero knew they were down, Cordero would have been trying to get into the cage to beat his ass, like, move your ass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he wouldn't just let that happen. It was, yeah. It was kind of frustrating. It's also frustrating that we keep talking about Gastelum, like, not really being right for 185, but then he misses weight at 185. So,
he almost missed weight.
Yeah, all right. He came back again. He needed an extra hour.
What was it? 1/4 pound?
I think so.
Yeah, something like that.
A quarter pounder.
But it's so weird with Kelvin because he's still, like, visibly, when you watch him, you're like, he's still so good.
He's
like,
so
he's
good.
1 in 5 or 1 in. It's not 1 in 6, is it? God, I hope not. I think it's 1 in 5 in this stretch. But like he's still so damn good, and it's so obvious. So like, I don't know. They need to get this guy a win. I heard people suggest like, let's do him and Brad Tavares. That's too dangerous for me. Like, let's do Kelvin and someone fucking under that, and make sure we don't go 1 in 6 here, so we can try to come back up the ladder.
Man, look, man, it's middleweight. Unless he goes back down to welterweight, these are all going to be tough fights for him. He's an really undersized middleweight.
I mean, he could fight like a Jotko, like Christoph Jotko, like somebody like that. Like, I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but like, at least it's not Brad Tavares. Brad Tavares looks freaking great lately.
It makes you wonder if the UFC are going to be dicks about it and be like, hey, how about your boy Uriah Hall? Because Uriah Hall and Kelvin Gastelum are actually boys. Like that. They're boys. Yeah,
they're boys, though.
Oh, are they really? I did not know that.
They've been boys since TUF.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't, actually.
But that's a rematch. That's a sellable rematch.
It is. I mean, I would love it. I don't think they do it, but who knows?
The only people that wouldn't love it is them.
Yeah.
Everybody else would love that fight.
Let's talk about Cannonier. Omar, where do you think Cannonier goes from here? He had to fight a replacement who was ranked much lower than him in the top 10 still. But now, off of this win, it wasn't the most impressive win of his career. But how close to a title shot do you think he is? Let's go with that.
I think he's probably one shot away. I don't think you can get a title shot off of Kelvin Gastelum win at this point. But like we did talk about last week, that's a valued win, right? To beat Kelvin Gastelum is no easy feat, regardless of how you've done it. So I definitely think it's a feather in his cap that he should be proud of. But I think he still needs a win in that top 5, and that, frankly, in that top 3-4 to really warrant a title shot, especially with how volatile that the middleweight division is right now, right? Izzy's basically been screwing everybody up at the top. And so, everybody kind of needs their shot at Izzy at this point. But,
right,
Whitaker has made his statement. He's made his claim. Costa has made decent claims, although, I don't know if he's still hurting from that beating. That one's on the internet forever, man. That's not going away.
He's booked. He's fighting Vettori.
That's right.
So, I mean, depending on exactly how that fight goes, I mean, Vettori was another one who's kind of in the mix now. All of a sudden, he's going to stay in the mix unless he loses a bunch of fights. But
yeah,
that top of that middleweight division is so volatile right now because of how Izzy is just messing everybody up. So,
okay,
he can go anywhere from here. Definitely up though.
Okay, Mark, let me get you in here. Let me ask you, like we touched on last week, even though Cannonier has to fight a replacement and a guy who's ranked lower than him, he's still got to win over the guy in the division who gave the champion his toughest fight. So pardon a little bit of MMA math, But what's your opinion? Put on your matchmaker hat. Where does Cannonier go from here?
Oh yeah, I think he's one fight away. You know, as much as whatever I was saying before about I thought Gastelum might have still looked like he had the higher ceiling, whatever. The results are the results. I think Cannonier is one fight away. My only point that might be a little bit different than from what I've seen mostly online is that I've seen a lot of people suggesting that Costa Vittori fight, saying let's see who wins that and match them up with Cannonier for the title shot. To me, I would prefer to go a different route because we just saw Costa lose and we just saw Vittori lose. Vittori's lost twice to Izzy. So rather than throwing one of them right back against Cannonier to get a title shot again, I would rather take the Till Brunson winner, especially if it's Till, and say, okay, we got Till Cannonier for the next shot against the winner of Izzy Whitaker. And then you either have, say Izzy wins it, you have Izzy Cannonier or Izzy Till, which are both fresh matchups that people I think would be a lot more interested in than a Costa rematch or a Vittori rematch already. Maybe a Costa rematch gets buzzed down the road, but I think he needs more than one win to create that, especially after how weird the last one was with all the excuses. So I'd love to see the Till Brunson winner fight Cannonier for the next shot.
Okay. Awesome. Well, guys, let's move on to the Bellator side of things from last week. And unless you guys have anything else to say about Cannonier Gastelum.
No, sir.
Awesome. So last Friday at Bellator 265, which took place in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, in a main event heavyweight clash, Cheick Kongo defeated Sergei Kharitonov via submission by a rear naked choke at 4 minutes and 59 seconds of round number 2 in the final closing seconds of the round. Omar, let me start with you. Cheick Kongo, 46 years old, gets another stoppage win over a very tough opponent. What did you make of Kongo's performance?
I may be in the minority here, but
here we go.
I really don't like watching Cheick Kongo fight anymore, man. I'm sorry.
Wait,
did
you
so
say
this last week,
you don't like him?
He didn't sway you after that comeback?
I just dude, he spends the whole first round against the cage. He thinks he's Anderson Silva against the cage, trying to dodge these jabs. And he's getting tagged. He's getting dropped. He got dropped 2 or 3 times.
Yep.
And then, I don't know, in round 2, he must have told himself, I'm probably going to get dropped. So just fuck it. And just lost his mind, got crazy with him and ended up winning the fight. But his opponent too, at this point, is also in his 40s. It's not like that dude looked, frankly, that amazing. He looked slow as hell, frankly. Looked like he hit like a beast. Don't get me wrong. At no point do those punches look soft.
Look, these are big boys.
100%.
Yeah.
But we've seen the elite heavyweights have some speed behind their punches, right? even the biggest of the big guys have some speed on their punches. Yeah. That wasn't really the case with this fight. This was a one of those fun legacy fight kind of things, but I'm just not sold on this whole Cheick Kongo's resurgence, and I'm just nah, man. It's a nah for me, dog.
You're gonna invoke the Randy Jackson. It's a no for me, dog.
Oh man,
Mark, go.
So, hey, it's not a resurgence. Cheick Kongo didn't go anywhere. This man went to Bellator and has gone 13-3 in Bellator. He is beating top-level competition still. He beat Volkov when he was still in Bellator. He beat Augusto Sakai when he was still in Bellator. He beat Timothy Johnson. Obviously, then he lost to them, but they're 1-1. He beat Vitaly Minikov. I mean, the dude is taking names. Now add Kharitonov to the list. Add another crazy comeback for Cheick Kongo, of which he's had 1 million in his career.
1 million. The most famous comeback maybe of all time.
Yeah, the Pat Barry one, right?
Oh my God.
The most mind-blowing comeback I've ever seen in my life. I think
broke my heart because I loved Pat Barry.
Same.
Mind-blowing.
Pat Barry was my guy.
Me too.
Yeah.
I loved Pat Barry, dude.
I don't remember who the ref was of that fight, but I was like, come on, man.
Yeah,
You
same.
couldn't have given Pat Barry that TKO.
Was it Mazzagatti? It might have been.
Oh man.
I feel like it was Herb, actually.
It might have been Herb.
I think it was too, actually. But yeah, the speed point is that you mentioned is the point I made last week. It's why I thought Kongo would win. Kharitonov is obviously still a monster, but I thought the speed would be the X factor. Kongo's little strategy in the first round, it's how he fights now, especially against a guy like Kharitonov. He was like, I'll stay against the fence. I'll dance around. I mean, he got hit more times than I'm sure he friggin' planned. And he was like, I'll probably tire this guy out and I'll get into my game. And it's what he did, man. It's hard for me, as much as his game and style is not my favorite. It never was. Even in the UFC, he was not my favorite. But it's hard for me to knock a guy who is like still borderline top 10-ish, probably top 15 in the world right now, which is where he was when he left the UFC and everyone kind of thought he was done fighting. And instead, he's just never left that level. He stayed there the whole time, and he's on one of the best runs of his career right now. And it's not out of the question that he could fight for a Bellator heavyweight championship.
Well, let me just stick with you, Mark, right there. Put on your matchmaker hat again. What would you do with Kongo right now if you are Scott Coker?
So it's a little bit of a mess because you have Bader, who is your heavyweight champ, who's stuck in your light heavyweight tournament. Then you have Moldavsky, who is the interim heavyweight champ. So it feels like you kind of have to wait until that tournament ends and have Bader fight him. But that's maybe if Bader loses. If Bader wins and has to take another fight in the tournament still, do you have Moldavsky fight someone else? I don't know. It's really messy. Mm-hmm. To me, I would have loved to say trilogy time, Kongo, Timothy Johnson, since they're 1-1 over in only the past couple of years, like just do the trilogy right now. Unfortunately and inexplicably, they chose Timothy Johnson to fight Fedor, which I hate. I literally would have been my 175th choice, but whatever. So we got to wait for that. So I don't know. Maybe you got to find a filler fight for Cheick Kongo. I know they have Davian Franklin, who's like their young up and coming knockout artist who called out Kongo last week. So maybe you book that one and either Kongo loses and you don't have to worry about him anymore. Or he just kind of gets a filler win in the meantime while heavyweight catches up. So we'll see.
Omar the outspoken about your hate for Cheick Kongo or for watching him fight. What would you want to see Cheick Kongo do from here?
Oh my God. Why would you ask me that?
Come on, man. Let me get something. Give me 30 seconds on this.
I look, dude, I would like to see him fight people that are his level, right? Like if we're gonna put fun fights on, that's fine. You're not gonna sell to me that Timothy Johnson is this fantastic win. Sorry, you're not. It like none of the guys that he fought Volkov whenever he fought Volkov. You're gonna tell me that if he fought Volkov today, Volkov wouldn't beat the brace off of this boy? Come on.
Yeah, he would. I'm not saying that, but Volkov was pretty damn good in 2015 and he still beat him.
Sure.
Scott was pretty damn good in 2017 and he still beat him.
It just I don't know. It doesn't do it for me, man. It doesn't tickle me.
I'll tell you what
Minakov still has one loss in his life. You know who it's to? Cheick Kongo. Man, tell you what, when I woke up this morning, I did not think I was going to be sitting on a podcast defending the resume of Cheick Kongo. That wasn't in my plans. Yeah. So here we are.
Who is that, Mark? Who is that football coach who said that quote once of like, you are what your record says you are, or something like that?
Oh, shit. Who was that? I don't know, but I know.
Anyhow.
And yes,
that I'm going to invoke that guy in that quote right now because Omar, looking at Cheick Kongo's body of work, you can't really deny. I mean, maybe one day, guys, we're going to do like our all-time rankings of different weight classes. But if we did heavyweight, I have to imagine, without putting any kind of number on it right now, that Cheick Kongo deserves to have some respect on his name for his record and for his body of work.
I will say, here's where my concessions come in. The man has fought a hell of a lot. His record is respectable. 31 wins, 11 losses is nothing to sneeze at, especially in MMA. A sport as volatile as MMA. But you also have to recognize, just like we know from every record, the record doesn't always tell the full story. All right. He's got his wins for sure. But the way he's been getting these wins just doesn't do it for me. Somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose. Like, that's fine. But it's not for me, man. It's not my flavor of ice cream.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
all right.
He's not making any all-time lists for me either, though. So I'll align with you at the end there, Omar.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's march on, guys.
Congratulations, Cheick Kongo.
Hey, congrats to Cheick Kongo. Got a nice big win on a big stage. All right, guys. Well, let's march on to PFL from last Friday as well. Kayla Harrison defeated the New Zealander Jenna Fabian by TKO at 4 minutes and 1 second of round number 1, clinching her spot in the 2021 PFL World Championship. So, Omar, let me start with you on this one. A pretty dominant performance by Kayla Harrison. What were your key takeaways from that night with her?
This is somebody I like to watch.
Really?
Kayla Harrison. Dude, Kayla Harrison's a beast. She's been a beast. Prior to MMA, she's been
on the mic too.
Yeah.
She is.
Oh my God. Yeah. She is a promotion machine. And she has no problem speaking her mind, even when it's not about promotion, just about I don't know if you guys saw her calling out a reporter who during the lead up to the fight, she was on a call. It was one of those, media day press conference calls, whatever. Her and her opponent were on the call together. I can't remember that. What was her name?
Jenna Fabian. So
I think they were on the call
together. Called Jenna Gina or something like that.
Well, yes. Yeah, so they mispronounced her name, number one. And then they basically asked her, you're so pretty, but you also know how to fight really well. And then he went into some other bullshit that at that point cared about.
I believe so,
yes. Yes. Yeah. And then she went on to correct him and then entertain him with the answer. Kayla was like, so let me ask you a question. If this was a guy, would you be like, you're so handsome, but you also know how to fight too? Or would you just go into what his profession is? Because this is everybody's profession here. We all do the same thing here, man. So I love her. I love it. Well, I was a big fan of when Ronda did the do nothing bitch.
Just to take the counterpoint, I do think that guys on the men's side, guys like the Luke Rockholds and the Alan Jobans have gotten questions like that. Of Luke Rockhold when he was modeling for Dior or some kind of fashion brand like that, he would have to field questions of you're making all this money modeling for these high-end brands. Why do you still want to get punched in the face? And he would have to field questions like that. So to be fair, I think that some guys do get that. Not every guy is, has the genes to have to be asked that. But for the most part, I think maybe more women have to get asked that than guys.
I would also not modeling on the side. He just said basically, "Hey, you're pretty and you can fight." It's a little bit different.
Yeah. That was what I was going to say. We're not talking about a profession that she's had. He's basically saying or insinuating that you're pretty, so you shouldn't be able to fight. But holy shit, you can.
Yeah.
That's kind of where it was coming from, and it was pretty messed up. I mean, I don't even think he realized how dumb it really was until he was called on it, to be honest.
Well, Mark, let me throw this over to you. Harrison fought an opponent who I believe threw 2 strikes, landed neither of them. And once Harrison got to the clinch, she went from the clinch to the ground. And then by the end of the round, it was over. So what did you make of Harrison's very dominant performance?
What else is new? It's not much to say. It's not much to analyze. She is just going to keep steamrolling women until she gets out of this tournament, takes her $1 million, goes and finds where the grass is greener, and finds herself a real matchup because they do not exist in PFL. And the finals will probably be a rinse and repeat of her last few fights.
Now, let me ask you this. This is an interesting take that I've heard from a few different talking heads in the MMA world.
Yes.
Do you think, well, there's maybe 2 ways to approach this question of what do you think Kayla could or should do, or what do you think she will do? Do you think she should stay in the PFL and just every year keep making $1 million by steamrolling through these tournaments? Or could she or should she take her talents to Bellator or UFC or even one, and maybe not make that much money. I mean, not every fighter, even on the UFC roster, is getting $1 million paydays.
So yes, there's certainly that argument to be made of how nice it would be to keep doing the PFL tournaments and make $1 million every year, unless someone comes out of the blue that's good enough to give her competition. But to me, and I think to most fighters, I would at least guess MMA is a sport that is very much about legacy. I mean, as are most, you could say it's about any sport. Most athletes want to prove that they're the best. That's why they do a sport. Yes, to make money, but it's about the competition for at least most of them. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's going to satisfy her to sit in PFL and keep doing this. Either of the other two scenarios, I think, are great. She could go to Bellator. I'm sure they would give her a ton of money and she could fight Cyborg. And it's huge. It doesn't need to be the UFC. That fight is huge and it's a payday. Obviously, if it's the UFC, from what we've learned recently, maybe she's going to make less than in the other promotions. Granted, I'm sure she still gets a payday to come to the UFC. And she friggin' gets a fight with the greatest female fighter that ever walked the face of the earth in Amanda Nunes. And if you beat Amanda Nunes, I mean, that's it.
Aren't they friends?
You're the GOAT. They are friends, but they've said they'd fight.
Oh, really? Oh, good.
Yes. Yeah, because people bring it up to Nunes and to Kayla a lot. Like, hey, are we going to see this? And they're both kind of like, yeah, like I'm down if it can happen.
Because we'll both make a lot of money.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, I love, again, I'd be super hyped for the Cyborg fight if it happened, but hard to not wish for the Nunes one. So I hope we see it one day.
I don't think Bellator is as forthcoming with their fighter paydays, their show pay, as the UFC is usually. But I've always
fighters saying it.
But I've also always heard that Bellator pays more than the UFC.
Yeah.
You've never heard people complain about Bellator's pay as you've heard UFC fighters complain. Never.
It's true. So she may not be making $1 million paydays right away, but if Kayla Harrison goes to a UFC or even a Bellator and continues to win and dominate, she's going to become a white hot star, superstar.
Like Amanda Nunes is making dough. Yeah. If you come in and beat Amanda Nunes, you're going to make dough. You know,
absolutely.
Like when you're that good, it's less of a concern.
But you have to remember she's in the 1%, right? Because you're not only getting money from the fighting itself, right? Every time that you go and you show up, at that point, they've got you doing the Modelo shit. They've got you doing all other kinds of different streams of income.
Points to all that jazz.
Right. You know, and if Kayla's smart, and it seems like Kayla's very smart, those $1 million are going to be that's an investment so that she can keep doing what she needs to do to make money on the side. And she doesn't have to worry about what the payday is going to be like for any future promotions or whatever. Because I think the reality is that women's MMA is still, unfortunately, hasn't reached the level that male MMA has. So it might be difficult for her to get a Conor payday, regardless of how well she speaks and how, frankly, fucking good she is. You know, she might not reach that payday. And if that's what she's looking for, because in her heart, you know, she knows that she can compare to it, especially skill for skill. You know, I give her all the props in the world that she deserves to get all the monies. But I think that comfort, especially if she does right with her money now, especially with the paydays that she's been getting, I think she'll be a lot more comfortable in the future.
Yeah, the way she can talk too, I'm sure she would have some marketing dollars thrown at her.
Yeah, sure. And also, you know, when her star grows, there's going to be way more monetization streams that open up to her as well. But quickly, guys, let me just recap some other results from last weekend's PFL card. The other women's lightweight semi saw Taylor Gordado beat Mariana Moraes by split decision, and Gordado is going to have the distinct privilege of squaring off against Kayla Harrison next time in the women's final. And then the men's heavyweight side, in the men's heavyweight semis, Bruno Capelloza TKO'd Jamel Jones in round 2, and Ante, excuse me if I butcher his name, Delia scored the unanimous decision win over Denis Goltsov. And they will face off in the heavyweight final, Capoloza and Delia. With that being said, guys, anything else that we want to talk about from these other big cards? Let's dive in. There's a few other fights that we wanted to highlight. Back in the UFC Fight Night last weekend, on the main card in the lightweight division, Mark Madsen scored a victory over Clay Guida by split decision. Mark, let me start with you. Marco Madsen, who everybody apparently thinks is Irish, but he's not. His middle initial is the letter O, and he chooses to use his middle initial, much like Hunter S. Thompson or something like that. But because it's the letter O, everybody seems to call him Marco Madsen like it's one word. Anyway, what did you make of Madsen's performance going up against the always tough and always game and always energetic Clay Guida?
Yeah. Anytime you can get a win over Clay Guida, it is a good win. And especially it did a lot for the resume of Mark Madsen, who didn't necessarily have that MMA win to hang his hat on yet as he's early in his career. So this was it. This was his legitimizing win that he's here. He's got to be taken seriously and so on. But with that being said, the fight was pretty underwhelming. He was strong behind his jab. I'll give him that. But for this silver medalist Greco-Roman wrestler to never wrestle, and then for Clay Guida to kind of never really get going, because I guess maybe he was a little too afraid of getting too close and allowing the wrestling to begin. It was kind of just this awkward fight where it almost felt like you were waiting for either guy to turn it up, and it didn't really happen. So it was a close fight. I did have it 29-28 Madsen. I think that's the right score. So I'm glad that he got the decision. But now we move on from here. He's got to fight, in my opinion, someone else on that similar level and hopefully look better. Like, he's calling out Gregor Gillespie. There is no shot I'm giving him Gregor Gillespie coming off of that win. I don't see what he's done. Clay Guida, for reference, if I may take 1 second here.
Please do.
Clay Guida I have at 36 in my lightweight ranks. So I've now moved Mark Madsen to 35 based off the split decision win. Mm-hmm. But I mean, Gregor Gillespie, I got at 13. Like, we have not hit that level. He's got to beat another guy or two here, at least in my opinion. Who knows what the UFC does? I get that he might be marketable as an Olympian and so on, but that seems a bit crazy to me.
Omar, what did you make of Madsen's decision win? Yeah, it wasn't my favorite performance. It was one of those fights where you do just enough, and I think that by the end of it, both guys, it looked like they had so much energy left over that I wanted more from both. Both of these guys are known to have all of this energy, all of this forward pressure. Clay Guida is literally known as the guy, like the Energizer Bunny, like he doesn't stop, but he never started either. Mm-hmm. And it was a very, very weird fight to just see jabs getting thrown for basically like 3 rounds, a couple hooks here and there, but it's just a fight that I guess I expected a lot more out of at least one of them and never really got it. Hey man, credit to Clay Guida. Madsen didn't have the most impressive performance, but to me, credit has to be given to Clay Guida to some degree because the guy never stops moving. Yeah. I mean, Madsen to me clearly looked like the better fighter in there, but you just can't get to Clay Guida. The guy just is elusive and he stays away. He's always moving. He's always bopping up and down. He's always throwing. He's a tough guy to go against. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's not an easy matchup at all. That's for sure.
Well, with that, boys, let's turn back to Bellator one last time. Last Friday at Bellator 265 in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, an exciting bantamweight fight took place in which Jornel A1 Lugo defeated Keith Lee via technical submission by rear naked choke at the 5-minute mark of round number 1. The timestamp of that is because Keith Lee never actually tapped. And he went unconscious just as the bell was ringing. So any ringside or rather cage side physician would have called that fight off, even though Keith Lee pretty much immediately regained his consciousness. Only a second or two later, he got up, he tried to play it off. He kind of jogged around the ring for a moment but then the referee saw that he was really out of it and that he did indeed lose consciousness, and he waved it off. So, Omar, let me start with you. What was your reaction to this fight with Lugo getting such an impressive finish over a tough guy in Keith Lee?
Yeah, it was a fantastic fight. The finish was crazy. He had him in a very, very deep choke. I think that there was awareness as to where the clock was, and so I don't think he was going to tap regardless of what was happening. But credit to the referee, because as soon as that bell rang and that choke was let go, he was out. His whole body was limp. His face hit the canvas. And you're right. It might have been maybe about a second or two. You could see him like shaking his head, like if he was trying to get awake.
Yeah.
And he was out. And there was a moment there where I thought they were going to let it go. And I'm just really glad the referee had the hindsight there to be like, probably not the best decision here. He was
yeah. I think that in the rule set, maybe there's something where if a fighter at any moment loses consciousness for any reason, the fight has to be called off.
I would think so. But it's one of those gray lines, right? Where did the referee notice it? The referee see it? The referee didn't call it necessarily. The only reason he let go of the choke wasn't because of the fact that he went out, was because the round was over.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I think, where we started getting into the technical submission part of it, because the fight didn't end because of that moment. The fight ended because the round ended. The fighter got up. The referee then deemed that he had then been choked out, and kind of went back to that. And so it was the referee's decision that made it a technical submission and not the actual submission itself, if that makes sense.
Okay. Mark, let me go to you. What did you make of Lugo and this finish that he got? The guy's only 25. He's still undefeated, 7-0 now. He's 4-0 under the Bellator banner. Where does he go from here? And what did you make of his performance?
Yeah, more up-and-coming bantamweight talent in Bellator. Their bantamweight division is starting to look good. It's crazy. Bantamweight is the hottest division in the world right now, huh? The UFC bantamweight division is on fire, and now here we got Bellator suddenly with a lot of young studs coming up. So I'll circle back to that point in 1 second, but I just want to say about Lugo himself, I thought he looks fantastic. I mean, he switched stances so fluidly the whole fight. His jab was lightning and powerful. His grappling was crazy opportunistic and so fast. Anytime Lee moved the wrong way, he was on him with a choke or whatever it may have been. And that's how he ended up getting the win. So he looked awesome. But coming back to the point about the bantamweights, a few times now, and again, they did it post-fight as Lugo won, on Bellator broadcasts, they've kind of mentioned the idea of a bantamweight Grand Prix being next. And no one has said like, oh, it's happening, but guys kind of keep suggesting it. And I absolutely think that should be the next division they do a Grand Prix in. If I may, real quick, to me, you got 9 names there.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you got to choose only 8. You got 9 names who would be awesome in a Grand Prix. You have Sergio Pettis, assuming you're going to put the champ in it, Juan Archuleta, Raufeon Stotts, Patchy Mix, Magomed Magomedov, Leandro Higo, James Gallagher, Jornel Lugo, Darian Caldwell. That's 9 names. All those dudes are eyeballs to the set. You'd love to see the matchups, how it played out, whatever. The only 2 with the fight booked are Patchy Mix and James Gallagher. They are fighting each other. So maybe you let that fight happen. It's not till November, which is kind of far away, but maybe you let that fight happen and losers out, and that's how you get to 8. I don't know. It would suck for whoever doesn't make it, because all those guys do have really solid resumes over there. But you take any 8 of those guys, that tournament would be dope, and I would be here for it. So I would love to see Bellator pull the trigger on that.
Well, a lot of great fights from last weekend. Congrats to Cannonier, Pantoja, Kongo, Kayla Harrison, and all the others that we've mentioned, and all the others that we couldn't mention. That being said, boys, let's close the book on last weekend, and let's start to look ahead, starting with who rises, who falls from last weekend's UFC Fight Night. This is the Priaulx Rankings. Mark, take it away.
So we'll bang these out real quick this week. As you guys can see, there is a lot that happened. There's a lot that's coming this weekend. So we want to make sure we have time to delve into all of that. So we'll just hit these quickly. Few different risers. You have Mark Madsen, as we mentioned, moved from 67 at lightweight up to 35. He finally got his legitimizing win. So big move for him there. You had Saeed Yakub Kakramanov, who debuted against Trevin Jones, who was a guy who beat Timur Valiev, which is crazy to me because I did not think Trevin Jones looked very good this past weekend. But Kakramanov gets the W over him, inserts himself into my bantamweight rankings at number 24. So nice spot for him to debut in. You had Josiane Nunez, who knocked out Bea Malecki. I have her.
Oh,
she was also debuting.
great overhand right.
Debuting at number 20 at women's bantamweight. And yeah, crushed her. And then, of course, the man with the nastiest finish of the weekend, the spinning wheel kick from Ignacio Bahamondes. Have him moving from number 78 to number 62 at lightweight. Not huge, but his opponent was also not high ranked. So it's a jump, but not a huge one. And then on that note, his opponent, Roosevelt Roberts, he is my faller. It's not a huge fall. I have him moving from number 61 to 65 at lightweight. But just want to note that he's a guy who a lot of people were high on and have continued to be high on, even through some losses that he's had. And it's starting to seem like it might be time to admit that people were wrong on him, because he does not quite seem to have it the way people thought he did. So he falls coming off of that loss.
I mean, a knockout highlight that smacks of Edson Barboza, whose name we are about to get into very, very shortly. But man, inside the UFC octagon, that's up there in terms of one of the greatest spinning wheel kick knockouts we've seen.
And right before the end of the fight too, last few seconds.
The great thing about that kick, though, that I think is super interesting is that as great as that kick was, it makes Edson's look infinitely better.
Yes.
I mean, it really does. Like Edson, and at no fault of, I mean, this kid he did a perfect heel kick, slapped that kid straight across the chin. Kid was probably out for at least a minute. Nothing wrong with his kick at all. But Edson's is like one of those things, like if you had to replicate one motion for like a video game or a learning tape or something, that's the one that you go with. Like Edson's heel kicks are so perfect.
The difference to me, one thing that notes the difference is that Edson's wheel kick made his opponent famous.
Yikes.
Like the MMA world knows the name. I mean,
Terry Edom.
Not casuals, but guys like us know the name Terry Edom mainly because of him being on the bad end of that spinning wheel kick from Edson Barboza.
It's the absolute first thing you think of when you
hear the name Terry Edom.
Think about wins, you think about that.
Right. Oh, you think about him going down like his soul floated away from his body. Yeah. All right. Well, boys, let us now turn from the past to the future with this weekend's cards. This weekend, we have another UFC Fight Night, Barboza versus Chikadze. Man, oh man, I am so excited for this main event fight. So we have Edson Barboza taking on Giga Chikadze in a clash of the ages. Do not blink when you watch this fight taking place at featherweight, ladies and gentlemen. Mark, let me start with you. This is going to be a fight that surely is going to feature nothing but stand-up, nothing but striking. What are your thoughts right now on this matchup at featherweight?
Yeah, so this is a fight where you tell a friend to tune in. You got a casual friend. You got someone you're trying to convince to get into MMA. This is it. You make them watch this one. If this fight is bad, I will not be on next week's show. I mean, it is going to be fireworks. You basically have Edson against new Edson. It's a mirror match. They're in the tiny 25-foot cage.
Right.
So the action, I would think, is going to be through the roof. I love the fight. It's a perfect matchup. So hard to break down. They're so similar in so many ways. It should be fantastic.
Omar, what do you make of this fight? They're two stand-up fighters. It's going to be fireworks, man. What are your thoughts?
I want to know what our bets are as to how many kicks total are going to get thrown in this fight.
All kicks. They should just tie their hands behind their back. Yeah. I was going to say they should both tie their hands behind their back and just kick each other.
Yes.
Oh, they should be like that dude from whatever wrestling thing is there where he has his hands in his pockets.
Orange Cassidy.
Oh my God, I love that guy. I have no
Yes.
idea where he fights, but that thing is hilarious.
AEW. Yeah, he's fantastic.
But yeah, man, that fight's gonna be all leg kicks, all body kicks. We'll probably see some head kicks now and there if they feel like they can fake them out enough. But I don't really expect there to be a lot of hand throwing. If I'm going to be 100% honest, I think this is all leg.
There's going to be plenty of punches thrown.
Yeah,
I mean, Chikadze sets up his punches so well.
Yeah,
because his kicks are so lethal.
And Edson's got a fantastic jab. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there'll be zero punches, but I'm saying there's going to be way more kicks involved in this fight.
I mean, both of these guys are in their primes. You have the 35-year-old Barboza, who has come down from lightweight. He's Brazilian. You have the 6-foot-tall Georgian Chikadze, kickboxing star. Oh man, I'm sweating just thinking about who I'm going to have to pick for this fight.
They're even the same exact size. Like their reach, I think, is 1 inch off. Their height is 1 inch off. They're like the same dude.
Yeah, they're both pretty big featherweights, with Chikadze being at 6 feet. Barboza's listed at 5'11". So at featherweight, both those guys are big, elite strikers for featherweight.
Yeah, and both of those guys, the way that they fight, they're not. We've seen a lot of fighters in fights in the past where guys are walking them down and eating a lot of shots. That's not how either one of these guys fight. They're for every fight, for every strike they get hit with, they're going to retaliate with one or two. This shit is going to be a brutal fight.
Absolutely. All right, let's do this, guys. Let's pick this fight. Let's get into this. Mark, let me start with you. Look like you have something to say.
So what Omar just touched on about the potential brutality of the fight is kind of what is pushing me toward my pick. It's two things. We say how similar these guys are in every way, and it's true. They couldn't be more world class in their striking, especially their kicking. Mm-hmm. But the difference between them, the one glaring difference, mm-hmm. is the resumes. Giga Chikadze has not fought anyone of any relevance other than Cub Swanson in his last fight. Prior to that, it's a fairly empty resume. Yes, he looked fantastic against Cub. Cub is older now. Is he quite the same Cub? Not sure. Edson Barboza's resume is a list of killers and murderers.
That's a great point.
So does that make it a sure thing? Of course not. Giga's fantastic, and it's not his fault that he hasn't fought these guys yet. He's new. He just got here. He had to work his way up. So I'm not saying that is any, slam dunk thing, but we are nitpicking in this fight. Mm-hmm. So I got to find something. So for me, I will look at the resume, and then on the note that I started to make earlier about what Omar said, the brutality of the fight, we have seen through Edson's resume that man can take a punch, that he will not go away, that he will be hurt. He will keep coming. He will keep throwing heat no matter how hurt he is. We have not seen Giga get put in those type of deep waters yet. We don't know how he'll respond. Maybe it will be just as good as Edson, but I got to make a pick here. I will side with the short thing over the unknown, and I will take Edson in what I hope is an absolute war.
Omar, who you got?
So in these kind of fights, when you have somebody that doesn't have the resume to back him up, that's when I start to look at the performances, and I start to look at what their potential in their performances dictate, right? There are always going to be those fighters that have to rise to the occasion. Like Mark said, the reason why he hasn't fought any or won against any of these guys is because he hasn't fought any of them, not because he's fought and lost. And Edson's been around the block. Edson has the advantage when it comes to experience, when it comes to the diversity of fighters that he's fought and game plans that he's had to fight against. But I think that Giga is in a different place right now in his career. I think he's at a very at a tipping point where if he wins this fight, this is a game changer for him, right? He enters new territory at this point. Everybody's going to want to match him up with who's the next hot thing. Try to get him to the title fight at some point in the near future. I think that Giga has shown enough, in my opinion, to say that he has the ability to rise to the occasion and beat Edson Barboza. I think it is going to be a hard fight. There is nothing to say that once this becomes that 3rd round, 5th round bloodbath, that Giga is going to be able to keep it going. But that man also looks like a stone cold killer too.
He does.
So I'm going to go, and we've seen, what we have seen is Edson hurt, and we have seen Edson fold. It happens. We haven't seen that with Giga because we haven't had to, because he's basically beating the shit out of everybody.
True. Do you have a rounded method?
We've seen him have challenging fights, right, where he hasn't been able to knock the guy out. He's gone decisions, but we've still seen him be dominant in those performances. So I think Giga's going to get it done.
Do you have a rounded
by
method?
Decision. I'm going to go decision. Yeah.
I'm saying decision as well.
You are.
Oh
my God. Okay. Mark, I love your points about Barboza and the resume. That being said, Giga to me is just such a sniper.
Yeah.
Like he's a real finisher, man. He's a real finisher, that guy. And even though he doesn't have the resume that Barboza has, everybody's got to have their first.
Amen.
That being said, I'm going to take Chikadze by knockout TKO. I'm going to say 2nd round. Let's go.
Like it. I just want Edson versus Max so bad that I'm just going to keep picking Edson in the hopes that he can get there.
Yeah, that would be a great fight. So this fight night also has another great fight. Kevin Lee taking on Daniel Rodriguez. This will be Kevin Lee's a new foray into the UFC welterweight division for Kevin Lee, formerly at lightweight. And here to welcome him back to welterweight is the rising Daniel Rodriguez, D-Rod, who I love, by the way.
Yep.
Now, even though D-Rod seems to be more of a sort of on the rise and Kevin Lee has sort of been more of an established guy, Kevin Lee is only 28 and Daniel Rodriguez is like 35 or 34 rather. So that being said, Omar, let me start with you this time. This is kind of an interesting, intriguing, and exciting matchup at welterweight. What do you make of it at first?
I think it's a fantastic fight. I actually think it's a little dangerous for Kevin Lee, for being honest. I think Kevin Lee has an advantage on the ground, potentially, at least on paper. But Daniel Rodriguez is a fucking tank. I mean, that dude is huge. And he looks like he hits like a beast. And we know that Kevin Lee is susceptible to getting hurt for sure. And my question really is, as good as Kevin Lee is on the ground, can he take Daniel Rodriguez down to the ground? Because if he can't, Daniel Rodriguez is probably going to beat the shit out of him. I don't see Kevin Lee striking being, I mean, what he did with Gregor Gillespie was insane, right? It was fantastic.
Great finish, great head kick finish.
But there isn't a consistency there, right?
Okay.
That was that performance, as fantastic as it was. I don't know if I see that same type of dominance happening against Daniel Rodriguez.
Mark, Kevin Lee returning to welterweight again. What do you make of this move for him? And what are your thoughts on this matchup against the very dangerous Daniel Rodriguez?
So I'm happy to see Kevin Lee back. Definitely, whichever way he goes, you can't say he's not a super talented guy. So anytime he fights, I'm happy to see it. He's been out for 17 months. So glad he's back. But I agree with Omar. It's a dangerous fight. It would not shock me if Rodriguez gets the better of him here. Lee has kind of always struck me as like a planner, both like game plan wise and mentally wise, that he kind of likes to like have his target. And, you hear him on interviews, the way he like really breaks down his opponents. So the idea of a short notice fight against a bigger, dangerous dude like Daniel Rodriguez, I don't know if I love that vibe mentally for Kevin Lee, especially when he hasn't fought in 17 months, and he's not on any kind of roll. And he had multiple times where he thought he was fighting Sean Brady, and now he's not. So it's a little bit of a tricky switch for Lee. Size wise, Rodriguez is 3 inches taller. He's the bigger guy. Lee, his reach we know is stupid long, so he actually has a 3-inch reach advantage on Rodriguez. So it's kind of opposites there, which is interesting. But Lee's reach is always stupid. But like Omar said, Rodriguez is the bigger guy, so the wrestling is not going to be easy at all. But I keep coming back to the fact that we have a history now of lightweights moving up to welterweight and doing really well, almost as if lightweight is the clearly superior division, because it seems like these guys move up and they all just win. Like, you got Gilbert Burns went from, he barely scratched the rankings at lightweight, and now he's one of the top welterweights in the world. Jorge exploded at lightweight. Chiesa has made at welterweight, excuse me. Chiesa has made a great run since moving up to welterweight. Nate hangs at the top of welterweight. He just almost took out Leon Edwards. List goes on. Cowboy, Pettis comes up and knocks out Stephen Thompson. Like, lightweights have a really good track record of kind of just immediately being at the top of welterweight, almost as if the divisions don't quite stack up against each other. So I think about that point, and I'm like, man, maybe Daniel Rodriguez, being what he is at welterweight, is not quite on this level of a Kevin Lee, and we're not really realizing that. The odds are pretty tight. I should reference those. For what it's worth, on the previous fight, I forgot to mention them, but Edson and Giga are a dead even pick 'em as expected. So there you go.
That's fine.
But Kevin Lee here is a slight favorite, -150. Rodriguez is +125, a slight dog. So that feels about right to me. But yeah, I could really see it go both ways. Kevin Lee is not going to be the better striker. Like, if he, against Gregor, he was. Against Rodriguez, he is not. If he can't get this thing to the mat, he's going to have some problems. It's really tough to pick. I always hate picking fights when a guy's coming off such a long layoff. I will go with Kevin Lee.
You will.
I want to believe that he is just the superior talent, and that he can lean on his wrestling and his grappling and do enough on the feet that he will get it done. I will say Kevin Lee. Do not think about how I want to take him. I'm going to say he finds a sub. Kevin Lee, second round sub.
Wow. Omar, do you have a pick for this fight? You got a rounded method?
So I actually want to see Daniel Rodriguez start to really climb those rankings and really get the opportunities to make a name for himself. I think Kevin Lee has had a lot of opportunities and he keeps fucking them up. And I honestly think Daniel Rodriguez has a really good chance to beat him in this fight. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to go with knockout round 2.
Wow.
Okay.
We're opposite on both of these. Someone's going to look smart next week.
I like D-Rod in this fight. I think that, I think Lee's going to have a hard time mixing it up with wrestling, because the guy who he just took on, the guy who he finished last by head kick in Gillespie, he had a size advantage over. He's not going to enjoy those same attributes over Danny Rodriguez. And Rodriguez has such great hands.
Yeah, he does.
I think, but that being said, Lee is a hard guy to finish with strikes. So I think that we're going to see Rodriguez scoring a lot. He may even hurt Kevin Lee, but Kevin Lee's going to be a hard guy to get out of there. So I'm going to take Daniel Rodriguez by unanimous decision.
One point that I wanted to make that I forgot to say is that Lee is a guy who gets caught standing still a lot, and Rodriguez's hands are so fast that could absolutely happen. So in no way am I discounting Rodriguez here, but I like that I'm the opposite of you guys. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the thing about Lee for me is whenever he gets hit and he gets into trouble, he's able to take things down and able to, clinch up and recover. I don't honestly think he's going to have that opportunity with Rodriguez.
Might not.
Yeah. Well, that being said, this Fight Night card is also featuring the finals of the new season of this Ultimate Fighter, the return of TUF. And TUF had been away for about 2.5 years and now has made a triumphant return, this time hosting new crops of bantamweights and middleweights, with the coaches being featherweight champion Alexandre Volkanovski and Brian T-City Ortega. So Mark, let me start with you. Why don't you take us through these two TUF finale fights on this card?
All right. So yeah, loved seeing TUF back. First off, I missed that show. You know, it's not for everybody. I know some people don't get into TUF. I always enjoy TUF. I love the way they do it. I'll get into it every time. So I was happy to watch TUF back. I'll start with the co-main event of the night, which is the middleweight final. Brian Battle against Gilbert Urbina. Of course, this was supposed to be Brian Battle against Tresean Gore, who just finished Gilbert Urbina in the semis on the show. Unfortunately, Gore, as we mentioned last week, is injured. Dana has said he's still going to get a fight, so he is out here. We'll see him down the road. And the man he just beat, Gilbert Urbina, steps in against Brian Battle. He is the underdog. He's plus 135, but not huge. Battle's minus 165, which, again, sounds right to me. That's the way I'm going to go in this fight. I think Brian Battle is a better version of Gilbert Urbina.
Yep.
They're really similar fighters. Urbina is a guy who has had two brothers go through TUF, if you don't know that. So the family story is pretty cool there. But yeah, Brian Battle just seems like he's kind of on a mission this whole show to me. And as I said, I think they're similar fighters, and Battle does everything better. I trust him more on the feet. I trust his wrestling more. I trust his grappling more. So I think it's going to be a tough night for Urbina, and I will go with Brian Battle to get it done. What do I want to say? I will say a submission for Brian Battle, round 2.
Okay.
We want to go next fight?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So then the bantamweight final is my favorite fight. I mean, I guess not of the night because you have Edson and Giga, but I love this bantamweight final. You have Ricky Tercios against Brady Highstand. Tercios is minus 165. Highstand's plus 135. So another one with close odds. A lot of close odds on this card. It's an interesting card to bet. I love this fight. I have been high on Highstand.
Very nice.
From the jump. Since I've seen him on the show. And it's funny because post-show, I learned that he actually has a super weak resume. Like a lot of his wins are against guys who are like 1-12, 0-5. So he's been fighting a lot of cans, which is funny because I'm seeing this guy on the show. And of all the guys on the show, he was the guy where I was like, holy shit, this guy's got raw talent. And I will say on that note, he is raw. You know, he's kind of, you can almost tell he's learning on the fly, getting his experience on the fly. But he has a lot of raw skills. He's a strong guy, strong grappler, athlete, tough. So I've loved him from the jump. I didn't know if he would get here, but he has. Problem is he might be fighting the most impressive fighter on the show, in Ricky Tercios. He's been fantastic. The guy looks great everywhere. He's got this, if you haven't seen him on the show, he's got like this almost ninja, like shaman mentality. Everything he says sounds like magical MMA.
Dude, he's 2021's Diego Sanchez. That's who he is.
Less crazy though. I feel like more like sensei type.
Like this era, like this generation's Diego Sanchez.
Sure. So he's a super interesting character. He's absolutely the more proven commodity. Highstand is only, I think, 22 years old. Like the guy is beginning of his career. He trains with Chiesa out there in Spokane. But it's a great fight. I'm having a hard time breaking it down just because of how much I love the raw skills that I think Highstand has. But I think this might be one of those fights where the guy who has the higher ceiling and may surpass eventually, which to me is Highstand, does not get the W tonight. I don't know if he's ready to get this one from Tercios. He's just so well-rounded. I'm having a hard time picking against him. So I'll say Tercios wins a decision in what I hope is a banger, and I think could be.
Awesome. Omar, do you have some picks for us real quick?
Yeah. So I also am going to go with Tercios. I loved watching Ricky throughout that entire season. That man is batshit crazy, but he is a fun dude. He's a fantastically fun fighter. He's crazy, but he's effective inside of the octagon. So he's a fantastic guy to watch. He gets hurt during his fights, but it really just brings a lot more energy to him. So he was definitely a good time on there. High Stand is definitely one of the guys who you would think would be more refined, especially compared to Ricky. But the things that I noticed about High Stand was when he got into those rough areas, he was able to push through, but you can see he was struggling. There was a mental struggle that was there. Ricky's not there. Ricky doesn't mentally struggle. This doesn't happen, at least from what we've seen. Doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. So in that regard, I think that, when the fire gets lit in the end of that fight, Tercios is going to be the one that comes out not burned.
Awesome. All right.
I do think Tercios is going to win the decision. Brian Battle, Gilbert Urbina, love this fight too. Story-wise, Urbina is probably going to be a better win in that case. I'm a sucker for dudes with kids though, so Brian Battle, but he hit me in the feels, man. So I think as much as I want at least one of these damn Urbina brothers to win, I think I'm going to end up going with Brian Battle. Also, besides the storyline point of it, I think Brian Battle is just a better fighter at this point currently than Urbina is. Okay. Decision for both.
Okay. Well, with that being said, before the Saturday night's UFC Fight Night, on Friday night, we're going to get treated to the continuation of the PFL playoffs with PFL 9, where we are going to get the semifinals in the PFL featherweight and light heavyweight divisions. So, gentlemen, quickly, can you guys give me some quick picks for these featherweight and light heavyweight fights? Anybody like to start? Go ahead, Mark.
I'll start it off. So at featherweight, I will take Brendan Loughnane. Until I see someone beat him on this run that he's on, I will continue to pick him. The guy's looked fantastic. He's the underdog here, betting odds wise, plus 135, but I'm going to roll with him. Chris Wade versus Bubba Jenkins. On the other side, I will go Bubba Jenkins. I was just so impressed with the way that he looked against Lance Palmer. Like, he looked like he's finally kind of putting it all together the way Bellator thought he would back in the day. So I'll go with him there. So Loughnane Jenkins final for me. In the light heavyweight, I'm going to take two Brazilian UFC washouts to meet in the finals.
Okay.
You got Antonio Carlos Jr. against Emiliano Sordi. I'm going to go Carlos Jr. It kind of seems to me he was always a guy who should have been doing better than he was. Like, it seemed like he couldn't quite hit what his talent said he should. So maybe that's happening now. I will roll with him. And then Cesar Ferreira, I will take. Hamlet just doesn't have much of a resume to me. I haven't seen it yet. He's favored, which is a little confusing to me, but I guess it's because Ferreira's like very hit or miss, as we learned in his UFC days. But I'll roll with him simply because I like the all Brazilian former UFC finale. So Carlos Jr. and Ferreira for me.
Omar, you got some quick picks for us?
I literally have all the same picks. So I'm going to bring no additional value there. I have literally all the same picks. I guess the only thing is I would call him cara de zapata.
Yeah.
Shoeface, baby.
Dude, you got to pick a guy whose name is Shoeface, Antonio Carlos Jr., man.
Yeah.
What a nickname. But with that being said, let us conclude our previews of this weekend's card. And now let us turn to our final segment of the episode. This is Inside the MMA Sphere with Omar Artola. Omar, take it away.
All right. Welcome back to the Inside the MMA Sphere. We're going to break it up into two little different parts. I'm just going to give you guys a couple of fight announcements that have gone on this past week that are pretty interesting. And then I'm going to give you a couple of stories to kind of set you on your way for this week. So real quick, Chris Montano or Moutinho, how do we pronounce his name? Mark, hit me.
Moutinho, I think, right?
Moutinho.
Okay. So Chris Moutinho is finally getting his next real fight with real time, real training, real camp. He's getting it against Aaron Phillips, who's also 0-1 in the UFC. So he's getting somebody that's comparable to him. So pretty excited to actually see. Hopefully he's got something more to show this time around. October 23rd for that one. Cheyenne Bays or Bays.
I believe
Bays.
it's Bays.
Bays.
Yeah.
Cheyenne Bays.
We messed this up on one episode already.
Yes,
Let's not do
yes,
it
we
again.
did.
As in
Cheyenne Bays versus Loma Lokbunmi is coming up, which is actually a pretty interesting fight. That's coming up on November 20th. Marquand Amirkhani versus Tristan Connolly, also coming up for UFC 267, October 30th. That's a fantastic fight. I love watching Amirkhani fight personally.
Yeah.
Dan
like
Hooker
Connolly's
versus
back.
What happened?
I like that Connolly's back. He was out for a while, hurt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dan Hooker versus Nasrat Paratst.
Oh, Hooker's got a fight again. Nice.
Yeah.
Yes. And Nasrat is a perfect fight. If you guys don't know who Nasrat is, he's like the guy that looks exactly like Kelvin Gastelum.
Yes.
Oh, that
15
guy.
pounds
Yes,
lighter.
yes.
Yeah. So that fight is happening September 25th.
Very different nationality or ethnicity, right?
Yes, totally
Is
different
he-
sides of the world.
Is he Iranian?
I know he's from the Middle East. I don't remember exactly
Okay.
where though.
I'm gonna tell you right now. I'm gonna look it up.
The last fight that I have is Overeem versus Rico Verhoeven.
That's right. Over in was it Glory?
Yeah.
Wow, Glory. Big things. I kinda
Glory Collision 3, I believe, is
Wow.
the event name.
I kind of Glory has not been on my radar lately. They are now.
Same. I mean, that one hit me for a loop. I was like,
Hell
what
yeah.
a matchup. That's a fantastic. Yes, Overeem is however old. I don't care.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
I'll
I
sign me
love
up for
Overeem
that
forever.
one.
Yeah.
That's a great one right there.
I still
Can
feel
we-
weird about him going back to kickboxing when in MMA toward the end, it started to be that he like couldn't be punched in the face. So and like he had to go to grappling. So to go back to kickboxing feels a little strange, but
That's a
we
good
shall.
point. Good point. But do you think we could get Ubereem again?
Oh God, I hope not.
I
I
hope
hope he
so.
knows that we
Like
can
Horse
see
meat,
it.
Ubereem?
We can see it.
Can he eat horse meat 8 times a day again?
You can't be in the UFC as long as he has now not been doing steroids and popping, then leave the UFC, gain all this muscle and be like, no, it's 100% official. It's fine.
Wait,
His
he
name
didn't
is
already, right? You're not saying he already did gain all this muscle.
No.
Oh,
But
okay.
like you can't
I was
do
like,
it
damn,
and
he didn't
expect us
wait
to be like,
to
nah.
waste any time.
No. So those are your fight announcements for this week. Definitely check out those fights. I think those are all going to be fun fights to watch when they come up. So the first story I have, I'm going to go through these stories relatively quickly. The last story I have, hopefully you take away with you, that's pretty fun. The first one I have is a little bit of a scandal. There's a fighter who used to be on the UFC roster. She's also been in Invicta. Her name is Vivian Pereira.
Okay.
She hasn't actually fought since 2019. She was 11-0 actually coming into the UFC originally. She went 2-2 in the UFC and then 1-1. I think after that, I think she went back to Invicta. Her losses though in the UFC were to Tatiana Suarez and Xiaonan Yan and Mizuki Inoue. So those are all actually decent losses as far as I'm concerned. She was never the same after Tatiana Suarez though. Tatiana Suarez ruined her. So that pure didn't really help. Anyway, the scandal comes as she got pregnant. And when she got pregnant with the guy who is the head coach of Dragon Combate Combate in Brazil, in Fortaleza, Brazil. And the coach's name is Marcos Batista. And apparently when she told him that she was pregnant, he basically blocked her and kicked her off the team. And
Oh, damn.
hasn't helped with the child, been avoiding courts, all kinds of stuff. He hasn't come out with any kind of statement or nothing.
Wow.
And basically she says that she's been with him since she was 15 years old. She's been training with him since she was 12. She's 27 now. I don't know how old this man is. I've been
This is
trying
one
to
of those
find it.
like, well, this is one of those like grooming situations.
You know, and if I knew his age, I would have a better answer for you. But the reality is he could have very well just been a younger guy in the gym too, you know, who
Right.
kind of grew up with her. I don't really know. I don't know how old this man is, but it doesn't sound good, regardless of whether he groomed her or not. To just get her pregnant and tell her, nope, bye, leave. You can't come back now.
That
Blocked her on
sucks.
all social media, all phone
Terrible.
conversations.
Can't she
It's not
go
good.
there? Couldn't she
Not
go to the gym and like confront him?
No.
What do
No,
you mean,
apparently
no?
this has been going on. It's a legal matter now down there in Brazil. So
I'm
apparently
sure
it's
it
been
is.
going on for the last couple of years.
Oh my
And he
God.
hasn't gone to see his kid or anything. So it's not great.
Wow. Oh, the kid is born.
Oh yeah.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's not a great situation there. That will be the last bad story that we have for the night. That's your negative one.
Okay.
I'm trying to find this dude's age. I can't find it.
I know, man. I couldn't find him anywhere. The next story I have is actually kind of a cool one. This weekend's card is actually opening up with the prelims. Mana Martinez versus Guido Ninja Canetti. Big fan of Guido Canetti, but Guido has had his ups and a lot of his downs in the UFC. Most of his losses at this point in his career have come from being in the UFC. And Mana is actually a guy who was on the Contender Series. He lost via submission. I think it was an armed triangle choke to Draco Rodriguez. Draco Rodriguez actually hasn't won a fight since that win. Since that win, on the other side, Mana has actually won his last 2 fights. And his last fight was actually on looking for a fight with Dana White. Fought for the championship of the organization he was fighting in. I think it was LFA, but don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure. But he knocked out a guy who had also been on the Contender Series and lost, but people were still very high on in Jose Johnson, and knocked him out in front of Dana and got his second chance to go back into the UFC when he had basically just been released from the UFC and is now getting his second shot. The reason this is kind of amazing, though, is because, we talked about Sal Solis last week. That was his head coach. Oh. And so this will be the first fight since his head coach has passed away. Mm-hmm. And there's just so many, talking points on the storyline that I really hope that Mana comes out on top. I think it'll be great to see him succeed here.
Nice.
Yeah. All right, boys, strap in for this one.
It's this. Okay.
This is one right here. So from a time perspective, this was a couple of years ago. This is basically Chael Sonnen retelling a story that Bisping had told him that Masvidal had told him. So if you recall, Masvidal and Masvidal and Michael Bisping had a beef a few years ago. If you don't know where that beef started from, Masvidal is very good friends with Yoel Romero. They're training partners, and they are also both Cuban. And they're very proud of their heritage. Don't say nothing about Cuba, basically, right? During one of Yoel Romero's fights, I believe it was the second fight against Whitaker, Bisping started ripping up the Cuban flag on camera.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it was. I don't even think he was doing it maliciously. I honestly think Bisping was drunk. And you know how they during fights, they just kind of zoom into people and different celebrities that are there and different fighters that are there. And he had one of those little Cuban flags or whatever. And he was like, just like being
actually
stupid.
Ripping it or like fake ripping it?
I don't actually know if he actually was able to tear it apart, but
Yeah.
It wasn't a flattering image. Let's just put it like that. Right. Masvidal took that personally. And so from that moment, Masvidal was like, me and Bisping have beef. And so there was tons of videos of them kind of jawing back and forth in hotel rooms and or hotel lobbies and all this other kind of nonsense, right? As the story goes, the beef was squashed when Masvidal went to London to fight Leon Edwards. Apparently they were in some kind of hallway or lobby or something like that, and Jorge Masvidal was by himself. Bisping, they were approaching each other, but Masvidal had a beanie on, didn't really look like Masvidal, if that makes sense, was just looking like a guy walking down. Bisping apparently didn't recognize him, but was with like 4 or 5 of his boys, decently sized men. And Masvidal had the instinct that he might be getting jumped. So he just chilled out on the wall and just waited for these guys to walk by. And Bisping just walked by with his boys. Now, I don't know if Bisping even knew that this was Jorge Masvidal. Didn't sound like Bisping knew this was Jorge Masvidal. But Masvidal was like, wow, if that was me with my boys, I would have jumped the shit out of you. So I think it's kind of dope that you didn't jump the shit out of me. Beef squashed.
Great.
Legitimately how that happened, okay?
I knew that beef got squashed. I had no idea that that's how that went down.
That's exactly what it was.
What a random story.
So because Jorge would have jumped him with his boys, that was his natural reaction. He found that the reaction of Bisping not wanting to jump him was respect. Beef squashed. Now, as a result of this beef getting squashed, Masvidal and Bisping chill out a little bit. Apparently may have had a drink or two, whatever, and we're sharing some stories. One such story made it from Bisping to Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen found it so amazing. He called up Masvidal, was like, bro, I know the story. You got to let me tell this. Are you cool if I tell this? Masvidal gives him a couple words and goes, yeah, that's cool. Hangs up the phone. Done. And so now this is the story of a night out with Jorge Masvidal. Okay. Apparently, the story goes, Jorge was at a club. He, you know how Jorge looks, always decked out, gold chain and whatever else, right?
Uh-huh.
So he's chilling. He's at a bar. He's at the bar at whatever club he's in. And some guy walks over to him, probably trying to, I don't know, buddy up, be nice, whatever. But he flicks Jorge's chain. So like Mark, right now, if you had like a piece on your chain and you just sort of like flicked it up. Yeah. And so Masvidal doesn't know this guy. Masvidal has no idea who this man is that just walked up on him and touched him. So Masvidal now feels threatened, knocks him out.
I'm sure he did. Why would you do that to someone? Why would
the
you do that?
Guy's buddy turns around, Masvidal knocks him out too.
Oh my God.
Masvidal then realizes, shit, it's kind of crazy. Should probably get out of here. So he goes to the bathroom of the club and he's like, just wait here. Let them figure that out. They, be here for a little bit. Walks in the bathroom. A couple minutes apparently go by and somebody else walks in the bathroom behind him. Masvidal knocks his ass out too. Clean. Just knocks the man out.
Why?
So now, Mike, that's a fantastic question. At this point,
he's just trigger happy,
asking
man.
yourself, wait a minute now. What did the man in the bathroom do? Why did you knock out the man in the bathroom? And so he says he just couldn't take the risk that he wasn't coming in there to do something to Masvidal.
Oh my God.
Man,
oh man. You got to watch yourself around Masvidal. He might play mind tricks on himself.
Jesus.
3 people cold cocked.
Dude.
Off of a chain.
And I'm sorry, where was this?
At some club, I guess.
In the U.S.?
I think it was in Miami or something like that. Oh, my
God. I mean, the guy that flicks Masvidal's chain, especially if he went up to Masvidal, like you said in the beginning, like if he knew who this guy is, that he's a pro fighter. Why are you like getting in his like space and touching his chain and like
people get off on that,
people are stupid.
People get off on trying to be tough with fighters. Like that's been a thing forever.
That is the stupidest thing.
No
ever.
sympathy for that guy. The bathroom guy, that's not really into that one.
But I thought it was super interesting to get into the head of Jorge Masvidal. Like,
yeah, I can't take
that man doesn't play, man. Like,
yeah, it's a good story.
Awesome, man.
And with that, I want to thank y'all for joining me inside the MMA sphere.
Thank you. Everyone who's been joining us up to this point of the episode, if you're still with us, we absolutely love you guys. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like this video. That will help us out so much. And of course, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you get notified every time a new episode drops. And you can also find the audio only version wherever you get your podcasts. And once again, subscribe there so you never miss an episode. Guys, parting shots.
We did it again. Thanks for sticking with us. Keep telling friends, spread the word, and enjoy the fights this weekend because we should have a banger.
Check your public bathrooms. Be safe.
Peace.
Later.
Peace.